Hello everyone, today I'm going to be showing you a Charlotte Katakuri deck profile. This is for OP4, and we get a whole ton of new tools to help this deck work amazingly. Of course, starting out with our searcher here, we have 4 pudding. Obvious, it's our searcher, gets us to what we need, crazy. Of course, one of the biggest differences out of OP4 is all of the new 2K counters we have. We are still running Struzen, but we also get 4 Capone Gang Beige and 4 Charlotte Amande. Capone Gang Beige is one of the most toxic and sacky options I've ever seen out of any sort of life game. If you rip them from life, target one of your opponent's units, they can't attack. Let me put it to you like this. You're playing against the green-purple Dolphy, they start swinging with all their 10 drops, and you, out of life, rip a Gang Beige, target that 10k, and you suddenly just saved 6k in guard value. Amane is also a really good option. It does technically do something, unlike Charlotte Pudding. Has a similar effect to Struzen. Both of these cards help us get rid of low-cost blockers, if it ever comes to that. Although, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty rare. Although you can beam the occasional Zoro player. Really getting the deck going, we have our units that we play from life. For Prospero, Prospero is both a really solid 5k attacker for 3. So he has normal monster stats, and when your opponent deals with him, you get a search from it. It's a lose-lose for the opponent, and that's what we're talking about. We also have our blockers for Brule, for Sanji. These fall in a similar pattern to Beige, where once you rip them out of life, it's really crazy. Sanji is, of course, better than Brule, but Brule does not take a discard to use. Sanji's also important because he dodges a lot more removal. Not all of it. A lot of the biggest removal options will hit Sanji. But it's not just he dies to, like, the slightest gust of wind. Of course, backing up Prospero, we have 4 Charlotte Cracker. Cracker's effect is honestly not as important as the fact that we get to play him for free. But he does have double attack, which really can matter if we are behind. In a pinch, if we rip him from life, and we're behind, we can put, like, 4 or 5 Dawn on him. Really start pressuring out opponents. It may not happen all that much, but it is something that we should consider. He also fills a valid spot that is our mid-game options. This deck really is top-end dependent, but you don't want to completely neglect mid-game. Lastly, for our trigger units, we have 4 Shirahoshi. It's more draw value. If you get it in your hand, you just use it as counter. It's just all a good card. My favorite play with Shirahoshi is putting it back with Charlotte Katakuri, and just getting that extra life and extra draws. Shirahoshi gets us to these, or these, depending on what we want. Now, for our top end. The top end for this deck is very straightforward. 3 Prospero, 4 Katakuri, and 4 Big Mom. Once we hit those last turns on curve, you're going to start slamming these down. Big Mom is a +2 for you, and a -1 for the opponent. It is crazy. And not only that, it also has normal monster stats. Katakuri is some of the best removal in the game. There's very little an opponent can do to play around this outside of just not playing an 8-drop. And if they're not playing it, they're losing. Not only does it remove your opponent's units, it also lets you recur your own units. If you're in a pinch and you want to do something wacky, you can play Katakuri, put a Brule or a Shirahoshi back in the life. Katakuri also gets around on KO effects, meaning it is one of the most important and just game-defining cards in the entire deck. If you'll notice, there is a slight hole between our 4 drops and our 8 and 10 drops. Rounding this out, we do have Charlotte Prospero, who is our normal monster. He's got good stats that align him up with Katakuri. We're playing the 6 drop as opposed to a 4 or 5 drop, because 6 drops gets around a lot of removal. It's not going to get around like what blue can throw at you, but it's a lot better for everything else. What Prospero does is it lets us not completely give up on our unit cost curve. And lastly, because you can't go without any sort of removal, we are playing 3 Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is one of those cards that just really does feel bad to use, but it is so important for the game. If you cannot remove one of your opponent's unrested units, there are times when you will just lose from the value lost from that. It does cost a life, but remember, if that unit you are killing gets the swing anyway, you are losing that life whether or not you wanted to. 4 is a bit much, I feel. You're only going to want to do this once, maybe twice. And by running 3 instead of 4, we get to up the number of Prospero and just fix our mana curve. There is an argument to play 4, but I can't justify it. Especially with how strong the deck already is. You have other options for stall if you need to. We're running 8 blockers that you get to play for free. We have healing with Big Mom. Thunderbolt is good, you need it, but you don't want to go crazy with it. And that's about all. It's a really simple deck profile, but it's one of the best decks in the game right now. Not only that, it does build into Inal. I wish the deck was a bit cheaper for new players. This card should not be $30 to $50. It fluctuates a lot, but man, I wish this was a super rare and not a secret rare. If you want to play a cheaper version of this deck, you could play the Yamato build, which doesn't technically need Katakuri or Big Moms, so you have a bit more flexibility. I don't think it's as good, but it is really solid. Matchup-wise, I think this deck is pretty good against everything, except those decks that can really do stuff to counter out with, like, blockers. To get out of those situations, this deck needs to see the right life, and that's not always possible. So that's it. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.